Captain Lee Taemin walked into the huge council chamber with heavy steps. His black uniform was perfectly clean, but his face showed years of frustration and anger. The chamber was massive with a dome ceiling that showed stars from across the galaxy. Hundreds of alien delegates sat in curved rows, all looking down at the small human section in the center. Taemin had been coming to these meetings for 10 years. He had watched his people get ignored, dismissed, and laughed at by creatures who thought humans were nothing more than wild animals. The memories burned in his mind like fire. Every rejected proposal, every mocking laugh, every time an alien called humans primitive or dangerous behind him walked Dr. Park So-young, a small woman with short black hair and tired eyes. She carried a thick folder filled with medical research that could save millions of lives across the galaxy. Her discoveries about cancer treatment and genetic repair had taken 20 years to develop, but every time she presented them to the council, the aliens said human medicine was too risky, too unpredictable. Next to her came engineer Kim Dong-ho, a tall man with calloused hands from years of building impossible machines. His latest invention could let ships talk to each other across the galaxy in real time instead of waiting months for messages to travel through space. But the council had rejected it 17 times. They said human technology was too crude, too simple for advanced civilizations. The chamber fell quiet as the three humans took their seats. The Valerian council leader stood up on his platform, high above everyone else. He was blue and tall, with 4 arms that moved like snakes. His voice came through speakers in a cold, mechanical tone. Today, we discussed the human request for expanded colony rights. He said. The words hit Taemin like a slap. Expanded colony rights. It was such a small thing. Humans wanted to build 3 new colonies on empty planets that nobody else wanted, but even this tiny request had been debated for 6 months. The Kaleri representative stood up first. He looked like a giant lizard with red scales and yellow eyes. Humans are too aggressive, he said in his hissing voice. They fight too much. They will bring war to peaceful sectors. We cannot allow this expansion. Taemin felt his hands shake with anger. The Kaleri had attacked 17 neutral worlds in the past year, but somehow humans were the aggressive ones. The hypocrisy was so thick he could taste it. The Rigel delegate spoke next through her tentacles that glowed different colors. Humans reproduce too quickly, she said. Their population growth is dangerous. They will overwhelm established colonies and upset the balance of power. More lies, thought Taemin. Human birth rates were actually lower than most alien species. But facts never mattered in this chamber. Only prejudice and fear. One by one, the alien delegates stood up to speak against the human request. Each excuse was more ridiculous than the last. Humans were too loud, too emotional, too unpredictable, too dangerous. The real reason was simple, though. The aliens were afraid that humans might actually be better at building civilizations than they were. Dr. Park leaned over and whispered to Taemin. They are scared of us, she said quietly. They know we can do things they cannot. Kim Dong-ho nodded his head slowly. Every time we solve a problem, they call it luck, he whispered back. Every time we build something new, they say it will not work. But they use our inventions anyway, when nobody is watching. The debate went on for hours, the same tired arguments repeated over and over. Taemin watched the alien faces and saw something that made his stomach turn. They were not just rejecting the colony request, they were enjoying it. The powerful aliens liked putting humans in their place, liked reminding them who really controlled the galaxy. Finally, the Valerian leader called for a vote. The result was no surprise, denied by a margin of 412 to 37. Only the smallest, poorest species had voted with humanity. The big, powerful empires had all voted no. Taemin stood up slowly. His chair scraped against the floor, making a sound that echoed through the silent chamber. Every eye in the room focused on him. Some aliens looked bored, others looked annoyed. A few looked curious about what the human would do next. We have been part of this council for 50 years, Taemin said. His voice was quiet, but it carried clearly through the chamber. For 50 years we have followed your rules, paid our taxes, sent our best people to serve galaxy-wide missions. We have given you our knowledge, our resources, our loyalty. He paused and looked around the room at hundreds of alien faces. We saved the Rigel colonies from plague using our medicine. We stopped the Andromedans from destroying themselves with our diplomatic skills. We built the hyperspace relay network that connects your worlds. We have bled and died protecting Species that call us primitive. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the usual whispers and shuffling had stopped. Dr. Park and Kim Dong-ho stood up beside their captain, their faces hard with determination. But today you have made your feelings clear, Taemin continued. You do not see us as equals, you see us as useful pets, animals that can build things and fight battles for you. But animals that should never be allowed to grow too strong or too independent. A few aliens started to look uncomfortable. The Valerian leader shifted on his platform, his forearms moving nervously. So we are done, Taemin said, and his voice grew louder. Humanity withdraws from this council effective immediately. We will take our ships, our people, our technology, and our ideas. We will leave you to govern your perfect, peaceful galaxy without our chaos. The chamber exploded into noise. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages. Translators buzzed and clicked as they tried to keep up. Some delegates looked shocked, others angry. A few seemed relieved. The Valerian leader banged his gavel, trying to restore order. Good riddance, shouted the Kalari representative. You humans are too emotional, too unpredictable. The galaxy will be more peaceful without your chaos. Several other aliens nodded and made agreeing sounds. Dr. Park gathered her medical files and closed her folder with a sharp snap. 20 years of research that could have saved millions of lives going back to Earth. Kim Dong-ho picked up his prototype communicator, the device that could have connected the galaxy in ways nobody imagined. Captain Taemin looked one last time around the chamber at the faces of creatures who had never seen humans as anything more than useful barbarians. Then he turned and walked toward the exit, his boots clicking on the stone floor. Dr. Park and Kim Dong-ho followed him, their heads held high. As they reached the door, the Valerian leader called out, Captain, this is a mistake. You will regret this decision when you realize how much humanity needs the council. Taemin stopped, but did not turn around. We will see, he said. Who regrets what? The three humans walked out of the chamber, leaving behind 50 years of service, sacrifice, and loyalty. The doors closed behind them with a final heavy sound. The aliens in the chamber looked at each other, unsure whether to celebrate or worry about what would happen next. None of them realized that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. 3 months had passed since the human ships disappeared into hyperspace. The council chambers felt strangely empty without the small human delegation, but most aliens were happy about the silence. No more emotional outbursts from Captain Taemin. No more desperate presentations from Dr. Park. No more rejected inventions from Engineer Kim. The Valerian Council leader sat in his office high above the station, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. Everything seemed peaceful. The humans were gone, and galactic civilization was running smoothly, just as he had predicted. The galaxy was better without their chaos. Then the emergency alarm started screaming. The leader rushed to the main command center, where dozens of alien officers were working frantically at their stations. Commander Yextar, a green-skinned Andromedan with bulging eyes, looked up from his screen with panic in his voice. Sir, we have a problem. The Kalari Empire just attacked 3 neutral worlds simultaneously. Bex Prime, Cordania, and New Zephyr, all 3 sent distress signals before their communications went dark. The leader felt his heart skip a beat. The Kalari were always aggressive, but they had never dared attack 3 worlds at once. That would be a direct violation of council law and an act of war against neutral territories. How long until our rapid response fleet arrives? He asked. Commander Yextar looked confused. Sir, what rapid response fleet? We disbanded that program 5 years ago. The council voted it was too expensive and unnecessary. No, the leader said, shaking his head. The human patrol fleets, they were always first to respond to emergencies. Where are they? Yextar stared at his superior with wide eyes. Sir, the humans left 3 months ago. Remember, they withdrew from the council. There are no human patrol fleets anymore. The terrible truth hit the leader like a meteor. The humans had not just been members of the council. They had been the council's unofficial emergency response system. For 50 years, human ships had patrolled the dangerous sectors, ready to jump to any crisis within hours. Their fast ships and brave crews had prevented dozens of wars before they could start. Now those ships were gone. Sir, what are your orders? Yextar asked. The leader tried to think quickly. Send our fastest ships to those worlds immediately. Contact the Rigel Defense Force and ask for assistance, sir. Our fastest ships will take 6 days to reach the nearest attacked world. The Rigel ships Or even slower, they would need 8 days, minimum 8 days. The leader sat down heavily in his chair trying to process this disaster. In the past, Captain Taman and his patrol fleet would have been at the first attacked world within 4 hours. Maximum 6 hours for all 3 worlds. The human ships were not just fast, they were strategically positioned throughout the galaxy, always ready for trouble by the time Council forces arrived, the attacks would be over, the damage would be done. 3 days later, the first reports came in. Bex Prime had fallen completely, the Kaleri had landed ground forces and enslaved the entire population. Cordania was burning, most of its major cities were destroyed, and millions were dead or dying. Only new Zephyr had managed to hold out, and that was because they had hired human mercenaries to help defend their world. The Council emergency session was chaos. Ambassador Veltar of the Rigel Federation stood at the speaking platform, his tentacles trembling. With rage and grief, his people had colonies on 2 of the attacked worlds. Where was our protection, he demanded. Where were the rapid response teams that were supposed to prevent exactly this kind of disaster? The Valerian leader tried to maintain order, but panic was spreading through the chamber. Other delegates were shouting questions and accusations. The carefully controlled council meeting was turning into a mob. This is what happens when we rely on primitive humans, shouted the Kaleri representative through his translator. Our own forces are more than capable of maintaining order. You lying snake, screamed Ambassador Veltar. Your people are the ones who attacked innocent worlds. While you sit here making excuses, my colonies are burning. The Rigel delegate was right, and everyone knew it. The Kaleri had struck when they knew the galaxy was most vulnerable. Without human early warning systems, the attacks had not been detected until it was too late. Without human rapid response teams, the attacks could not be stopped before massive damage was done on Earth. Admiral Choi Min-soo sat in his office in Seoul watching the galactic news feeds on multiple screens. His aide Commander Song Mi-young stood beside his desk reading reports from their intelligence network. Sir, the attacked worlds are requesting immediate assistance. The civilian casualties are in the millions. They are offering to pay any price for human military support. Admiral Choi was an old man with gray hair and kind eyes, but his face was hard as stone when he looked at the burning worlds on his screens. He had served in the human patrol fleets for 30 years. He had saved countless alien lives and prevented dozens of wars. Most of those aliens had never thanked him, had never even acknowledged that humans were protecting them. Not our problem anymore, he said quietly, turning off the screens. But sir, Song protested, those are innocent people dying. They had nothing to do with the council decision. The Admiral walked to his window and looked out at the city below. Seoul was beautiful in the evening. Light, clean, safe, peaceful. Human children played in parks while their parents walked home from work. This was what mattered now, protecting humanity, not aliens who saw them as useful animals. The council made their choice, Commander. Every single one of those species voted to exclude us from their precious civilization. They called us too dangerous, too unpredictable, too chaotic. He turned back to face his aide, his voice growing stronger. They wanted a galaxy without human interference. Well, now they have it. Let them solve their own problems with their own methods. But what about our patrol routes, sir? What about the early warning stations? Shut them all down. Recall every human ship to Earth or our colony worlds. If the aliens want to govern the galaxy without us, they can protect it without us too. No more free security. No more human lives spent protecting people who hate us. Song nodded slowly, but her face showed the same conflict the Admiral felt in his heart. They were doing the right thing, but it hurt to watch innocent people suffer. The humans had always been protectors. It was in their nature to help others even when those others did not deserve help. Sir, there is something else. The 3 worlds that were attacked were all on trade routes that human merchant ships used to patrol. The Kaleri specifically targeted worlds that lost human protection. The Admiral was not surprised. The Kaleri were brutal, but they were not stupid. They had been planning this attack for months, waiting for the right moment. When the humans left the council, the Kaleri knew exactly which worlds were now defenseless. How many other worlds are in the same situation? He asked. Song checked her tablet. At least 40 worlds, sir, maybe 50. They all depended on human patrol fleets for protection. Now they are sitting targets for anyone who wants to attack them. The Admiral closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. 50 worlds full of innocent people who were about to learn the hard way what human protection had been worth. But there was no going back. The aliens had made their choice, and humans had made their send a message to all human patrol fleets. He ordered all ships return to Earth immediately, no exceptions, no delays. What about the distress calls, sir? We are receiving hundreds of requests for help. Ignore them all. The Admiral's voice was final. Humanity is no longer the galaxy's police force. If the aliens want our help, they know where to find us, but they will have to ask very nicely, and they will have to pay us. The human ships began their journey home. The galaxy started to understand what it had lost, but for most aliens, the lesson was just beginning. The real disasters were still to come. 6 months after humanity left the Council, the first cargo ships began disappearing. The galaxy ran on trade between worlds that often hated each other, and humans had been the ones making those trades possible. Now, with human merchant fleets gone, the careful web of galactic commerce was falling apart. Dr. Yun Hana sat in her new office on Mars colony, reading message after message from desperate alien governments. She had been the Council's chief economist for 15 years, helping design trade agreements and solve supply problems. Now she worked only for human worlds and watched the alien economy crumble from the outside. The first crisis hit the Zenthi Collective, a species of small blue creatures who lived on a world with no natural resources. They survived entirely by importing rare minerals from distant worlds, then using those minerals to manufacture complex electronics that they sold across the galaxy. But the minerals they needed came from planets controlled by the Corvan Republic, their ancient enemies. For decades, human traders had been the neutral middlemen. The Zenthi would sell their electronics to human merchants who would trade them to the Corvan worlds for minerals. Then the same human ships would bring those minerals back to the Zenthi homeworld. Everyone made money, and nobody had to deal directly with people they hated. Now the human traders were gone. Dr. Yun read the desperate message from Prime Minister Kethzak of the Zenthi government. Please, Dr. Yun, our people are starving. Our factories have been shut down for 2 months. We have no minerals to work with. The Corvan worlds refuse to trade with us directly. They still blame us for the war 300 years ago. The economist shook her head. Sadly, the Zenthi-Corvan war had ended before humans even discovered fire, but aliens held grudges for a very long time without human middlemen. The two species would rather let their people suffer than make peace. He opened another message. This one from the Rigel Federation. Food prices on our worlds have increased by 300%. It read, we depended on grain shipments from agricultural worlds, but those worlds will only trade with humans. They do not trust our species. After the incident 50 years ago, Dr. Yun remembered the incident. A Rigel military ship had accidentally destroyed a human freighter, killing 300 people. The agricultural worlds had never forgiven the Rigel Federation for that mistake, but they trusted human traders who had helped negotiate peace agreements and built relationships over decades. More messages flooded her screen. The Andromedan cluster needed medical supplies that were only manufactured on worlds they had fought wars with. The Tau Collective needed fuel, but the gas giant mining operations were controlled by their political enemies. The Kalari Empire needed food because they had spent so much money on weapons that they could not feed their own people. Every problem was the same. Different alien species refused to trade with each other because of old wars, political disputes, or simple prejudice. Only humans had been neutral enough, trusted enough, and stubborn enough to make deals between enemies. The Council had tried to replace human traders with their own people, but it was a complete disaster. The Valerian merchants were too proud to work with species they considered inferior. They would rather lose money than be seen dealing with lesser beings. The Rigel traders were honest and reliable, but they were incredibly slow, taking months to complete deals that humans could finish in days. The Kalari had tried to become traders, but nobody trusted them. They had a habit of stealing cargo or demanding protection money from the ships they were supposed to be protecting. Even when they tried to trade honestly, their reputation made other species suspicious. Dr. Yun opened a video call with her assistant Lee Jun-ho, who was working on Earth. The young man looked tired and stressed from dealing with constant alien requests for help. Doctor, we received over 2,000 trade requests today, he reported. Most of them are offering double or triple the normal prices for human shipping services. What about the Council's new trade initiative? She asked. Jun-ho laughed bitterly. It collapsed yesterday. The Valerian and Andromedan Merchants got into a fight over trade routes, 3 ships were destroyed, and now both sides are threatening war. The council had to cancel the entire program. Dr. Yoon was not surprised. She had warned the council years ago that their different species could not work together without human mediation. But they had ignored her advice like they ignored everything humans said. The economic problems were getting worse every day. Factories were shutting down because they could not get raw materials. Food shortages were spreading across dozens of worlds. Medical supplies were becoming scarce because the manufacturing worlds would not trade with the worlds that needed them. The aliens had discovered something terrible. They could make the best technology in the galaxy, but they could not work together to share it. Without human traders to bridge the gaps between hostile species, the galactic economy was collapsing. Dr. Yoon received another urgent message, this one from the Valerian Council leader himself. The message was formal and cold, but she could sense the panic underneath the diplomatic language. Dr. Yoon, we require your assistance in resolving certain trade difficulties. Several key supply chains have experienced disruptions. We are prepared to offer substantial compensation for human involvement in restoring normal commerce. Read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. 6 months ago, the same Valerian had called human economics primitive and dangerous. He had voted to exclude humanity from the council because he thought aliens could do everything better. Now he was begging for help. But he was still too proud to admit he had been wrong. The message never mentioned that the aliens needed humans. It only talked about hiring human services, as if humans were just another vendor. Her assistant Junho appeared on her screen again. Doctor, the situation is getting critical. The Zenthi homeworld is reporting mass starvation. 3 Andromedan colonies have declared independence because they cannot get supplies from their home government. The Rigel Federation is facing revolution because of food shortages. Dr. Yoon looked out her window at the red Martian landscape. Human colonies were thriving. The Mars farms were producing more food than ever. Human manufacturers were working overtime to supply their own world's human trade. Ships moved freely between Earth colonies, building a new economy that did not depend on alien politics. We are not their solution anymore, she told Junho. They wanted independence from human chaos. Remember, they wanted to prove they could govern the galaxy better without our interference. But Doctor, people are dying, innocent civilians who had nothing to do with the council decision. Dr. Yoon felt the same pain her assistant did. She had spent her career helping aliens build better economies. And now she was watching those same economies collapse, but there was no going back. The aliens had made their choice, and they had to live with the consequences. Send a standard response to all trade requests. She ordered human merchant services are currently unavailable to non-human governments. All alien trade requests are denied. What about humanitarian aid? Junho asked. Food, medicine, basic supplies. Dr. Yoon hesitated. The humans were not monsters. They did not want to watch innocent people suffer, but they also could not keep rescuing aliens from problems that the aliens had created themselves. Emergency humanitarian aid only, she decided. Medical supplies and basic food for civilian populations only. No military aid, no luxury goods. No industrial supplies, and only through neutral third parties, not directly to governments. It was a compromise that satisfied nobody, but Dr. Yoon knew it was the right choice. Humans would not let children starve, but they would also not fix the problems that alien governments had created. The aliens needed to learn that actions had consequences. As the galactic economy continued to collapse, more and more alien leaders began to realize the truth. Humans had not just been members of galactic civilization. They had been the foundation that made it work. Without human traders, diplomats, and mediators, the galaxy was falling apart. But the economic collapse was just the beginning. The worst problems were still coming. 1 year after humanity left the council, the galaxy began to literally fall apart. Systems that had worked perfectly for decades started breaking down in ways nobody understood. The aliens were discovering a horrible truth they had been living with human technology for so long. They had forgotten how to maintain it without human help. Engineer Jang Woojin sat in his workshop on Mars colony, building defense systems for the human colonies. His old workbench was covered with blueprints and tools, but his computer screen showed dozens of desperate messages from his former alien colleagues, messages he was not supposed to be receiving. The first message was from his old friend, Dr. Kexvam, an Andromedan engineer he had worked with for 10 years, Wu Jin. The message read in broken human language: our planetary shield generators are failing. We cannot understand why the power levels are stable, the hardware appears functional, but the shields keep flickering and weakening. We have tried everything, but nothing works. Please help us. Our homeworld is defenseless. Wu Jin stared at the message with mixed feelings. Dr. Kexvam had been a good friend and a brilliant scientist, but he had also voted with the other Andromedans to exclude humanity from the council. He had called human engineering crude and unreliable just 1 year ago. The problem was simple. Though the Andromedan shields were based on human technology that Wu Jin himself had designed, the aliens had never bothered to learn how the systems actually worked. They had just copied the blueprints and built the machines. But the shield generators required constant fine-tuning and maintenance that only humans understood, without human technicians to adjust the quantum resonance frequencies. The shields were slowly failing. The Andromedans could build the machines, but they could not keep them running. More messages appeared on his screen. The Rigel Federation was having problems with their space stations. The artificial gravity generators were malfunctioning, causing people to float around helplessly or be crushed against the walls. The life support systems were breaking down, filling stations with toxic gases. The Rigel engineers were panicking because they could not fix problems they did not understand. The Tau Collective was facing an even worse crisis. Their planetary climate control systems were failing. Without the massive weather management computers, their worlds were experiencing deadly storms and temperature changes that could kill millions of people. The systems had been designed by human climatologists, using algorithms that no alien scientist had ever fully understood. Even simple things were breaking down. The universal translators that allowed different species to communicate were full of glitches and errors. The computers would translate hello as death threat or translate peace negotiations as declarations of war. Diplomatic meetings were becoming impossible because nobody could understand what anyone else was saying. Wu Jin opened another message, this one from the Kaleri Empire. The proudest, most arrogant species in the galaxy was begging for human help. Their military computers were crashing during battles. Their weapons were misfiring. Their ships were getting lost in hyperspace because the navigation systems were failing. The Kaleri message was desperate and humiliating. Engineer Zhang: we know our people have not treated humans with proper respect. We were wrong to question human technical abilities. Our fleet commanders are requesting immediate assistance with critical system failures. We are prepared to pay any price. Wu Jin almost laughed at the irony. The Kaleri had spent decades claiming that human technology was primitive and unsafe. They had refused to buy human weapons or hire human engineers because they thought their own technology was superior. Now their advanced Kaleri systems were falling apart, and only human expertise could save them. The biggest shock came when Wu Jin received a message from the council headquarters itself. The massive space station that served as the government center for the entire galaxy was experiencing critical failures. The fusion reactors were overheating. The computer networks were crashing. The transportation systems had stopped working. Commander Yextar, the Andromedan who ran the station, sent a personal plea. Engineer Zhang: I am writing to you secretly because the council leadership refuses to officially request human assistance, but our situation is desperate. The headquarters station is dying, and we do not know how to save it. The message included technical specifications that made Wu Jin shake his head in disbelief. The council station had been built 50 years ago by human contractors using human-designed systems, but over the years the aliens had made their own modifications and changes without understanding how those changes would affect the overall design. Now the station was like a giant machine with mismatched parts. The alien modifications were fighting against the human systems, causing cascading failures throughout the entire structure. The council leaders were working in darkness, breathing recycled air that was slowly becoming toxic as their most important facility died around them. Wu Jin called his supervisor, Director Park Min-jae, who was in charge of Colonial Engineering Projects. Director Park was a serious woman who had spent 30 years building infrastructure for human colonies. Director, we are receiving hundreds of requests for technical assistance from alien governments. Wu Jin reported every major system in the galaxy seems to be breaking down simultaneously. Director Park was not surprised. She had predicted this would happen when the humans left. The council aliens were good at copying human technology, but they never understood the underlying principles. They treated human engineering like magic that worked without explanation. What kind of problems are they reporting? She asked. Everything, Wu Jin replied. Shield generators, life support systems, climate control, military computers, even basic things like elevators and lights. The aliens have been using human-designed technology for so long they cannot function without human maintenance. Director Park walked to her window and looked out at the thriving Mars colony. The human settlements were expanding rapidly, powered by fusion reactors that never failed, protected by defense systems that worked perfectly, managed by computers that never crashed. Human engineers understood their own technology and kept improving it, while alien engineers had stagnated. How many requests are we getting? She asked. Over 3,000 so far, Wu Jin said, and more arriving every hour. The aliens are offering incredible amounts of money for human technical support. Some are offering entire star systems in exchange for engineering help. Director Park considered the situation carefully. The aliens were learning a painful lesson about the difference between using technology and understanding it. Humans had not just been building things for the galaxy. They had been maintaining the technological foundation that made galactic civilization possible. Send a standard response to all requests. She decided human technical services are not available to non-human governments. All alien engineering requests are denied. But Director, some of these systems control things like planetary life support. If they fail, millions of people could die. Park felt the same conflict that every human leader was experiencing. They did not want innocent people to suffer, but they also could not keep rescuing aliens from their own mistakes. The aliens needed to learn that expertise had value and that treating experts badly had consequences. Emergency life support only. She decided we will provide minimal assistance to prevent humanitarian disasters, but nothing else. No military systems, no economic infrastructure, no convenience technology. They can learn to fix their own problems, or they can live without them. As the technological failure spread across the galaxy, alien leaders began to understand something that terrified them. The humans had not just been participants in galactic civilization, they had been the engineers keeping it running. Without human knowledge and expertise, the galaxy was literally falling apart. Space stations were losing power. Planets were losing climate control. Military fleets were becoming useless as their weapons and navigation systems failed. The proud advanced alien civilizations were discovering that they were helpless without the primitive humans they had rejected. But even this technological crisis was not the worst thing that would happen to the galaxy. The aliens were about to face something even more humiliating than system failures. They were about to face the complete collapse of their pride. 18 months after humanity left the Council, the galaxy was burning. Wars raged between species that had been peaceful for centuries. Economies had collapsed, leaving billions hungry and desperate. Technology was failing everywhere, leaving whole worlds in darkness. The proud alien civilizations that had once looked down on humans were now facing extinction. Ambassador Kethran of the Tau Collective stood on the bridge of his small, damaged ship, looking at Earth through the viewscreen. He was one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, a leader whose words could decide the fate of entire star systems. But now he was just a desperate creature begging for help from the people he had once called barbarians. His ship was falling apart. Just like everything else in the galaxy, the engines made strange noises, the life support systems kept failing, and the navigation computer had crashed twice during the journey to Earth. Only the emergency backup systems were keeping him alive, and those were human-made devices that somehow still worked perfectly. The human orbital station above Earth was beautiful and clean and obviously well-maintained. Human ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls shining with fresh paint and their engines running smoothly. Everything about human space looked organized, efficient, and peaceful. It was the complete opposite of the chaos that now ruled the rest of the Galaxians. Requested permission to dock and was surprised when the humans granted it immediately. A human security team met him at the airlock, all of them polite but clearly suspicious. They escorted him through the station corridors that were bright and clean and filled with the sounds of normal life. The ambassador had been to this station many times during his years on the Council, but it looked different now, more prosperous, more confident. The humans moved with purpose and energy, while the few alien visitors he saw looked tired and desperate. Most of them were probably here for the same reason. He was President Nam Ji-woo received him in her office, a simple room with a desk and chairs and windows that showed the blue-green earth below. She was a small woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes, but Kethron could see the steel underneath her gentle appearance. Behind her stood the same human leaders who had been humiliated and dismissed by the council just 18 months ago. Admiral Choi Min-soo looked older but stronger. Captain Lee Tae-min stood at attention, his uniform perfect and his face showing no emotion. Dr. Park So-young held a tablet that probably contained reports about the disasters spreading across the galaxy. President Nam gestured for Kethron to sit, but he remained standing. Instead, he did something that no Tau collective leader had done in over 1,000 years. He knelt on the floor and pressed his forehead to the ground in the ancient gesture of complete submission. Please, he said, and his voice broke with emotion. My people are dying, our worlds are burning, our children have no food, no medicine, no hope. We need humanity's help. The room was completely silent. The humans watched the alien ambassador grovel on their floor, but their faces showed no satisfaction or pleasure. They looked like doctors watching a patient suffer. Necessary but painful. President Nam spoke quietly. Have you come here as an official representative of the Tau collective? Yes? Kethron whispered without lifting his head. I speak for all 7 billion of my people. And what exactly are you asking for? Anything, everything. Kethron raised his head, and the humans could see tears in his large alien eyes. Our worlds are in chaos without human protection. The Kaleri have attacked 4 of our colonies. The Rigel Federation has cut off all trade because of political disputes that we cannot resolve without human mediation. He struggled to continue. Our technology is failing because we do not understand how to maintain the systems that humans built for us. Our economy has collapsed because we cannot trade with other species without human merchants. Our government is falling apart because different factions are fighting over resources we cannot obtain. President Nam listened without interruption, but Kethron could see the pain in her eyes. She was not enjoying this moment of power. She was watching the consequences of decisions made by people too proud to recognize the truth. 1 year ago, you voted to exclude humanity from the council. President Nam said quietly. You said we were too chaotic, too unpredictable, too dangerous for galactic civilization. Has that opinion changed? Kethron felt his heart breaking as he remembered his own words from that terrible day. He had stood in the council chamber and spoken passionately about the need to remove human influence from galactic affairs. He had called humans a destabilizing force that prevented true peace and order. We were wrong, he said, and the words felt like acid in his throat. We were so terribly wrong. Humans were not the chaos in our galaxy. You were the order. You were the foundation holding everything together, and we were too arrogant and too stupid to see it. Admiral Choi stepped forward, his face hard with controlled anger. You called us primitive animals, he said. You said our technology was crude and unreliable. You laughed when we offered solutions to your problems. You treated us like children who should be grateful for any attention from their better. Kethron could not deny any of it. Every word was true. The aliens had treated humans with contempt and condescension for 50 years. They had taken human protection for granted and never acknowledged how much they depended on human skills and knowledge. You are right to hate us, he said. We deserve your anger. We deserve to suffer for our pride and our blindness. But please do not let innocent people pay for the mistakes of their leaders. Dr. Park stepped forward, holding her tablet. The Tau worlds are reporting massive crop failures, she said, reading from her screen. Medical shortages are causing plague outbreaks in 3 major cities. The climate control systems are failing on 2 agricultural worlds. Food production is down 60% from normal levels. Kethron nodded miserably. It was all true and worse than the reports indicated. His people were slowly starving while their technology fell apart around them, and they were not the only ones. The same disasters were happening across the galaxy as species after species discovered how much they had depended on human expertise. What about the other council members? President Nam asked. Are they also reconsidering their position on humanity? Kethron hesitated, then decided to tell the complete truth. The Valerian council leader refuses to admit any mistakes. He says the current problems are temporary and will resolve themselves. The Kaleri Empire blames Everyone except themselves for the chaos. The Andromedan cluster is too proud to ask for help, even though their homeworld is dying, but many smaller species are ready to beg. President Nam continued. They want humanity to return and fix all their problems, but they do not want to change anything about how they treated us. Yes, Catherine admitted that is exactly right. They want human solutions, but they do not want to acknowledge that humans were right all along. They want to go back to the old system where they could benefit from human work while treating humans as inferior. President Nam walked to her window and looked down at Earth below. The blue world was peaceful and prosperous while the galaxy around it burned with wars and suffering. Her people were safe and growing stronger while alien civilizations collapsed under the weight of their own pride. If humanity returns to galactic civilization, she said slowly, it will not be as junior partners begging for acceptance. We will not go back to being ignored and insulted while we do all the real work of keeping the galaxy functioning. What are your terms? Kethron asked, though he suspected he would not like the answer. President Nam turned back to face him, her expression calm but determined. Those terms will be discussed when the entire council comes to Earth to formally request our return, when every species that voted against us admits their mistake and asks for our forgiveness. When they are ready to treat humanity as equals instead of useful animals. But people are dying now, Kethron pleaded. How many more will suffer while we negotiate? President Nam felt the weight of that question, but her resolve did not waver. The galaxy spent 50 years learning to take human sacrifice for granted, she said. Now they can spend a few more months learning what life is like without Itaz. Kethron was escorted back to his failing ship. He understood that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Humanity was no longer desperate to belong to galactic civilization. Instead, galactic civilization was desperate to have humanity back, but the humans would return only on their own terms, and those terms would change everything. 2 years after humanity left the council, the galaxy was on its knees. The proud alien civilizations that had once ruled the stars were now broken shadows of their former selves. Wars raged unchecked between species that had been peaceful for centuries. Entire worlds had gone dark as their technology failed. Billions of beings faced starvation as trade networks collapsed. The breaking point came when the Valerian homeworld itself began to die. The great capital of the Valerian Empire had been the center of galactic civilization for over 1,000 years. Its massive cities housed trillions of beings. Its orbital platforms controlled galactic communications, and its government decided the fate of hundreds of worlds. But the city-planet depended completely on technology that humans had built and only humans understood. When the climate control systems failed, catastrophic storms began tearing through the urban landscapes. When the food processing plants shut down, famine spread through the crowded districts. When the water purification systems broke down, disease killed millions in just weeks. The most advanced world in the galaxy was becoming uninhabitable. Valerian Council leader Zexthal stood in his dying office watching his civilization crumble through the flickering view screens. The emergency power was failing, the air was becoming toxic, and outside his window he could see the glow of fires burning across the city. He was the most powerful being in the galaxy, but he was helpless. To save his own people, his aide Commander Velkos stumbled into the office carrying a portable oxygen tank. The young Valerian looked exhausted and desperate. Sir, we have received responses from all major species in the galaxy. Every government has agreed to your proposal. They will come to Earth and formally request humanity's return. Zexthal felt a mixture of relief and shame. It had taken the near extinction of his own species to finally break his pride. The Valerian Empire that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was about to kneel before the humans they had called primitive barbarians. How many ships can we gather? He Eskedvilkos checked his failing tablet. 57 ships, sir, representing every major government and most minor ones. The Kalari Empire is sending their crown prince himself. The Rigel Federation is sending their entire High Council. Even the Andromedan cluster has agreed to participate, all of them coming to beg the humans for help. Zexthal thought the most humiliating moment in galactic history, but there was no choice. The alternative was watching their civilizations the alien fleet that arrived at Earth was a pathetic sight compared to the mighty armadas that had once patrolled the galaxy. Most of the ships were damaged and running on emergency power. Their hulls were scarred from battles, their engines were failing, and their life support systems barely worked. In contrast, the human defense fleet that met them was magnificent. Hundreds of sleek ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons powered but not threatening, their hulls gleaming with fresh maintenance. Human space had become an island of order and prosperity in a galaxy of chaos. The negotiations took place in Geneva on Earth itself. 57 alien ambassadors sat in uncomfortable chairs in a simple conference room facing a small group of human leaders. The contrast was deliberate and clear. The humans were confident and in control while the aliens were desperate. Supplicants President Nam Ji-woo sat at the head of the human delegation, flanked by Admiral Choi Min-soo, Captain Lee Tae-min, Dr. Park So-young, and the other leaders who had been humiliated by the council 2 years earlier. They looked calm and professional, but every alien in the room could feel their quiet power. General Oh Kyung-soo led the human negotiating team. He was a stern man with gray hair and cold eyes, who had spent his career protecting aliens who never thanked him. Now he held the fate of those aliens in his hands, and he intended to make the most of it. The terms are simple, he announced, reading from a prepared document. Humanity will return to galactic civilization and restore order to the chaos you have created, but we will return as leaders, not as junior partners begging for acceptance. The aliens shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, but none of them protested. They were in no position to negotiate. First, Earth will have permanent veto power over all major council decisions. No law can be passed, no military action can be taken, and no policy can be implemented without human approval. Second, all human colonies will be granted full independence and self-governance. You will have no authority over human worlds and no right to interfere in human affairs. Third, every species that voted to exclude humanity from the council will issue formal public apologies acknowledging their mistakes and thanking humanity for its mercy. Fourth, you will pay reparations to humanity for the costs of rebuilding our military and economic systems to serve galactic needs. The amount will be determined by human accountants based on the actual value of services we provided for 50 years without proper compensation. The alien delegates looked sick as they heard the terms, but they had no choice. Their worlds were dying, their people were suffering, and only humanity could save them. The species that had once ruled the galaxy were about to become vassals of the people they had rejected. Valerian Council leader Zexthal raised one of his 4 hands to speak. May we have time to consider these terms? General O smiled coldly. You may consider them for as long as you wish, but every day